Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call this Monday, August 7th, 2021, regular meeting of the Canal Winchester School Board to order. Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Tom. Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Kruger?
Present.
Mr. Metzler?
Here.
Mrs. Talley?
Here.
Mr. Unati?
Here. Motion passed 5-0. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Sutler, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, we do. We have one addition, and it'll be in the consent agenda, number 4 under supplemental, and that's Travis Kyler. And I believe that's for an assistant volleyball coach. We had a volleyball coach resign, and Mr. Kyler will take his place.
And that's under number 4,
Number
correct?
4, Travis Kyler, yes.
Okay, thank you. I see him as posted. Okay. Then I will need a motion to approve the agenda as written with the addendum.
So move.
Mr. Butler?
Second.
And Mr. Kruger. Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Kruger? Yes. Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Unati?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. You have presentations now. Mr. Morales, did I say your name correctly? You got it. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Good to go? Yep. All right, Board of Education, good evening.
Good evening.
I appreciate you having me here. So my name is Mr. Morales, as my students call me, Danny Morales, actually. So I am one of our behavioral mental health specialists here in district. So within, you might think, what does that mean? So I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in the state of Ohio. I'm going to talk to you this evening a little bit about what our mental health supports are, because I think that there's been a lot going on, to say the least, the last several years. And now these students need this more than ever, I would say. So in terms of our exact supports, I would say there's 3 exact systems that we offer, okay? 3 support tiers. For myself, behavioral mental health specialist, we work primarily within the special education department and in that arena. So for us, we'd be written into the students' education plans, 504 plans, for related service. Counseling minutes would be written into the students' IEPs, could be for, let's say, social emotional supports, could be for behavior, executive functioning, those matters. Then we also partner with Children's Hospital, which we're super pleased to continue that partnership. Then we also have mental health interns as well. So the primary difference is I work within the special education arena. They work within the general education population for students. Children's Hospital and the interns do. So that's kind of our main breakdowns. So in terms of how referrals might go for students that are seen, could be from different avenues. Obviously, there's a lot of stakeholders within the school environment. Could be a parent guardian reaching out, wanting student to have mental health access. Obviously, teachers are seeing these issues primarily in their classrooms. In my arena, with intervention specialists, could see that in their classes as they're working with students. It also could be, obviously, administration, nurses, school psychologists. Maybe they're seeing warning signs or symptoms that these students are struggling. Could be with, withdrawal, maybe not seeming like themselves, those things. And so when we're speaking about the referral processes, our school counselors are going to primarily be our cog that's going to turn that, right? So let's say we hear about that, and we're going to contact the school counselor in our buildings and see maybe which of those tiers I told you would be most appropriate. Would it be me under the special education umbrella, Children's Hospital, or our interns? So the main thing I don't want people to get misconstrued is we have a lot of options for mental health, right? And so the way it can work, one cog is going to work. If we refer, it'll just be which one fits under that exact tier. So we have more options than less, which we're lucky in that regard. So I want to talk a little bit about preventative care. So for Children's Hospital, well, a lot of what they offer is, let's say, like social skill groups, positive behavior games, or like teachings for students. They also offer for us parent workshops, trainings, things of that sort. Summer counseling supports for students, which is also really essential. In terms of my department, our preventative care, we do a lot of, so this program that's called Signs of Suicide. You might have heard of it before. So it's called the SOS program. So the middle schools run it for years. The high school, we just brought it back this past year. Convenient timing, obviously, with everything going on, right? We want to be sure we're screening and being sure we're not missing anything with these students. So the way that program is going to work, what it will do, so at the middle school level, we work with, it's the 6th graders get screened. And then at the high school level, it's going to be 9th and 10th graders that it happens within the health classes. And I think it just makes sense for health, right? Because we're talking wellness, talking the whole child. Physical health is just as important as mental health. These are the things we want our students to learn and understand. We need to learn it ourselves. So the way it works is it assists our team in identifying the signs and symptoms of depression or suicide in our youth, right? So through this program, we teach the students, it's this ACT is what we call it. It's an acronym, right? So acknowledge, care, and tell. So we're acknowledging the warning signs and symptoms of depression, showing, let's say we're teaching the student to say, we're showing your friend you care by noticing these things. And then we're telling that trusted adult. We don't need our students to be counselors. We have counselors in our district. They're already going through enough. So, but I think students often, though, take that burden on of like, I need to help that friend. I need to speak with them, stay up late and help them. They don't need to do that, but they oftentimes feel obligated. So we want to be sure we're telling them to be that messenger maybe and tell us about it, right? Which can be difficult to do. So then students who might be identified or flagged through the program could be referred to one of our 3 support tiers, either behavioral mental health specialist, Children's Hospital, or one of our interns. Or maybe it could be an intensive outpatient program, maybe at Children's. Maybe it could be eating disorder, could be trauma, any of those things if we see those signs come up as well. So that's a very brief overview of our program. I could go into a lot more detail with time, but we have other things on the agenda. I'm just so appreciative of you guys giving me time to come up here and speak about this. Something I care a lot about, something these kids are going to continue to need more and more supports with, and I'm happy to be here to share. So if you guys have questions, comments, I'd be open to hearing about it.
I do, sir. Do you ever use peer support as part of the program, the dynamics of the entire thing?
Yeah.
And do you train them?
So the students aren't necessarily trained. There are programs that do that. A lot of what SOS will do, it has them point out those warning signs more than anything. And that it encourages them as peer-to-peer to, okay, if you see this collectively in this peer group, then reach out. Because oftentimes, if you have 1 or 2 peers who see it, it might be more inclined to reach out to that trusted adult with those warning signs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Reynolds, it sounds like it's a really important job that you're doing here. I was just curious, how many students are you serving? I know last year might have been a little different, but typically how many students are you serving throughout the course of the year?
Yeah, so I ended last year with about 40 students on my caseload, which is heavy for mental health counselors. And so a lot of mine, it would go, let's say, for the IEP services, it would be like quarterly or monthly minutes that I'm going to meet. So it might be, let's say, 120 to 150 monthly minutes, which might break down to minimum of at least 4 to 5 meets per month.
And then you did say you had some, I know we've had interns in the past, so
Yeah.
do you guys know for this year, how many interns are we going to have this school year?
So we're hoping, ideally, we would always have 1 per building.
Okay.
But we're kind of switching some partnerships. I'm actually wanting to expand out partnerships. We primarily worked with Ohio State previously, but I'm trying to reach out to Dayton, Ashland, other programs that are close. So ideally, 1 per building.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Mr. Butler, we can also get numbers on the number of students serviced by Nationwide Children's Hospital as well as our interns from last year.
You got it.
Awesome. Because I know it sounds like, especially as the kids are transitioning back into the building and all the things that they've been through,
Yep.
it sounds like, this service is even more important than probably we've ever really realized. So
Absolutely.
it does it. So if you give me that information, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
can
you.
do that.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Where does social services, where do you guys connect as far as Mrs. Voyachek and how she interacts? Is she part of the family and you're part of the student, or how does that bridge?
So for her, I would say she's more family. I think you got it. Yeah, she's more of the whole family community, and we're more of that direct student service.
And you guys obviously are working together
Oh,
to
yeah.
communicate with her to
Mhm.
get to the family, and then
Absolutely.
is that how that's relayed, or is that you reaching out?
Yeah, so oftentimes,
'Cause I know
so
that could be a delicate reach.
process. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, so for us, we'll connect with Kim. Let's say if we're having our own family concerns, we're hearing about it. We want her to go out, reach out directly, and maybe link them with those community resources that maybe we don't have directly, our team.
Okay, okay.
Anything else? Well, thank you. I think it's very important.
I appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you for coming. Mr.
Appreciate it.
Morales. Thank you.
Okay, the next presentation will be Deputy Mike Myers.
Thank you, Mike. Just lower it.
It will, if it does.
You turned it off.
I might have turned it on too. That's good. I'm a little shorter, apparently. I'm Deputy Mike Myers. Nice to meet you all. A little more direct. There we go. I've been with the Sheriff's Office since 1998, and I bring a lot of experience with me. First and foremost, we undergo tons of training. You guys know that. It's every day. So this is something that I was really nervous about. They kind of threw me to the wolves. Jim knows me very well. We've gotten to know each other. I've tried to do my best to bring everything that the school district is bringing to the students and the parents. The portrait of a graduate, that's something that I would have never saw a school district actually do. What you guys have here is a lot like I had at Fairfield Union. I was a 96 graduate there. And a lot reminds me of that. Even though that was a county school, the school district really reminds me of my school, and it makes me feel at home. Everybody has welcomed me, made me feel really good to be here. But a little bit about me, I've grown to love this position. I'll take that first. I'm a people person. I like talking to people, especially good people. It's brought some personal challenges as far as how to get children that really don't want to talk to you to relate to you, and that's been awesome. Just to get there and talk to, whether it's a little second grader all the way up to a kid graduating high school. I've been in charge of 3 different buildings. When we had it before, we had 3 different jails, officer in charge, a field training officer, whether it be for the patrol division, jail division. I've trained the whole entire jail division countless times. I've worked all 3 shifts, worked lots of hours. I can throw all that out, but this summer, as a SRO, what we do is try to get out in the community, and we really did that. I think we had 3 or 4 pool parties. It's something I would like to establish up here in Canal, Winchester, to just get younger kids the idea that police officers are just like a teacher, just like a parent, just like anyone else. It's important to me to link that so when we have an issue, they feel comfortable coming to us. Whether it be me or the other school resource officers, we all talk and we all meet regularly, and we all, whether it's an email or a phone conversation, we're always in communications. I sent an email to the transportation department just this week. We're having buses at Baltimore. It'd be Liberty Union, and then Fairfield Union. They're, pulling catalytic converters off. So, anyways, we try to do that, and it's important for me to also have good communications with my principals. Get to each school the high school's not the only one. You know, the middle school might be out there, but I get out there and make sure everything's going good. I will do my best to represent the district as good as I possibly can, and to give you guys whatever, well, resources you may need, whatever tools we may need, and to help educate staff on my end. You know, what to look for, what to be kind of on your toes about, what to be more aware about. And I realize that we've got some great, highly trained individuals in our district. We truly do. And that's a blessing, because it was kind of, when I came in, it just, you know, it was like I was under their wing at first, you know. So I'd like to carry on and not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but just make that wheel better, you know. So if you guys have any questions for me, happy to answer. Mike?
Now, you graduated from Fairfield Union in '96.
Yes, sir.
Did you play football or baseball?
I played football.
I remember you did.
Okay. You did look familiar. You did look familiar, so.
Well, Officer Myers, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
You kind of expressed like it was a little bit of a surprise. Seemed like it might have been a little surprise being our resource officer, but we are happy to have you. You know, a good resource officer is a difficult thing to find, so you know we're very fortunate to have you here this school
Thank you.
year. And I know you transition into our buildings. I'm sure you're going to build those relationships. So I'm excited to see what you're going to bring, and we're definitely happy to have you here in the district.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Absolutely. All right.
All right.
We've been very fortunate with our school resource officers, and we've had 3 good ones. And looking forward to working with Deputy Myers this upcoming school year. He did a great job for us last year, so and we're happy to have him here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Officer Myers.
Thank you.
Okay, our third presentation would be from the CWEA.
Thanks. Hello, Carla Shawinski, co-president. Good to see everyone again. I just want to share a little bit about what our teachers have been doing over the summer, and specifically the past 3 days. We've been engaged in PD in the district since last Thursday. It's been excellent. Lots of different things going on. And besides having that engagement, now that we're back to school, our staff has been working over the summer doing lots of things, continuing education classes towards master's degrees, professional development to support our curriculum changes that are coming. And some of us even took a little bit of time to disconnect, which after last year was really important, because we are back and we are ready to be actively engaged with our students, our families, and our community. We're looking forward to several things happening across the district. The high school redesign and the implementation of that. We're excited to see where that goes and how we can better working with the administration collaboratively, our teachers, to make that the best possible experience for our students. Middle school and Winchester Trail are implementing more Leader in Me training, which is super excited to see where that's going to go. And I know they've been engaged the past few days and are looking to implement a lot of those things. Indian Trail and Winchester Trail have 2 storybook trails, which is super exciting for our schools, but also for our community. That we have one at the park off of Dietz Road over there, and then a new one at Winchester Trail for our families and communities to engage in, that our students, even that young, will be participating in creating that. Super excited to see where that goes. Indian Trail is also engaging in science of reading, professional development, to engage in that, to better our students with that curriculum piece. Just here to say that we hope for a great school year. We're looking forward to working collaboratively with the board as well as our administration at the higher levels to the buildings, our families, and our students and communities. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Otherwise, I just wanted to say we're glad to be back and looking forward to working together again.
Carla, it was good to get your energy back. It's been a while, so it's good when you come back and kind of get the ball rolling, starting our meeting off the right way. So, like I said, I look forward to the school year starting, and I know your teachers are excited about it, and we're definitely happy to have you back. So, I got nothing but positive things to say, so I'm going to leave it
Awesome.
there.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited to be here. We don't know all the challenges, but we've survived last year successfully, working collaboratively, and I know that we can meet the challenges that come up this year as we move ahead with all the different things that are going on across the district and the world, So,
Carla, as I said this morning, you guys matter.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate that. It was a good opening meeting this morning, and the words were heard by our staff. So thank you for being there, Mr. Kruger and Mr. Unati. You all were represented well by your peers here, I have to say. They did a nice job with that. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving into the public comments section, public participation at board meetings. There are certain guidelines. One of them is 5 minutes for each speaker. I just wanted to let you know that ahead of time. If I mispronounce your name, please correct me because I'd prefer to be correct. The first one on our list is Marcia Porter.
It's Marcia.
Thank you, Ms. Porter.
Thank you so very much to the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and to the board members. It is a privilege to be here tonight. I stand here as, I know portrait of graduate is very important. I stand here because I have a grandson who is part of this school district. He goes to a wonderful school, Indian Trail. He's going to be a second grader. I can't speak enough about Indian Trail. Excellent principal, Mr. Riddle. The assistant principal and Mrs. Cobb, all of the teachers, I can list them. When my grandson started, it was Mrs. Paula Miller, and then he went to Mrs. Mickey Miller. And this year, I believe her name is Mrs. Lindsay Sharp, okay. But anyway, my grandson comes from a home where we're very much engaged, we're active in education. And I come here tonight because I want to represent maybe some of the parents or grandparents in our district. In our home, my husband suffered a massive heart attack, and they gave him very little time to live. Well, my grandson lives with us, and last year we participated in the remote koala program, and it was excellent. Now, I come as a retired principal and also administrator. So it was probably a lot easier for our home. But we work and we encourage other parents and other students. And so with my husband being so ill and his mother suffering with lupus, we have a lot of medical situations. And Wednesday school starts, and he will have to leave our loving arms and go back into school. I understand that to ride the bus, mask. But once he leaves off the bus, there's an option. That's where I'm a little bit concerned, not only for me, but for other parents. So I'm the voice of many parents. Being an educator, I know that when you have children on the bus and they're very young, they do a lot of different things. They take their masks off. They share their masks. I like red. I like yellow. Can I have yours? You know, children will be children. But once they walk off the bus to the school building with no mask or the option of putting a mask somewhere, you're going to have a lot of masks that might be not as clean as they were when they left home. And in a building, even though the principal, I know Mr. Riddle is going to work so hard and all the other principals in the district to make it where it needs to be, you're still going to have situations where you have to be real. And so I'm hoping and praying that you look at maybe having it more masked so that everyone is protected. Because once my grandson leaves and he goes into the school, we have told him to keep his mask on so that when he comes back, his papa is going to be safe. That we don't have a situation where he's going to be rushed to the hospital or anything like that. And he knows he's the kind of little boy that he has a lot of compassion. So he probably will tell others, be safe, you can do this and do that. And we just want to make sure that all children have the opportunity to stay in school, to be able to learn, to be able to be role models, to finish the empowering situation in Canal, Winchester, and let alone the portrait of a graduate. So I masked up. I told my husband I'm trusting in the Lord to protect myself so that I can come here, so that you will look at maybe giving children the opportunity to mask, to do it right. We know that by looking at the news and by looking at some of the articles, it's here. It's not going anywhere. And so we want to make sure that every child is safe and secure. Not only the children, but the teachers and the administrators and those people that are the support staff. So again, superintendent and assistant superintendent, board members, I hope that if not by Wednesday, that you will just hear the plead of a parent, a grandparent, and look at the smaller children and the other children in the district. Let's be a district that starts the year and finishes the year, and to do great things for our students and everyone who is part of Canal Winchester. Thank you so much for giving me the time to come out and to talk with you. And I don't know if you have questions for me, but it's just so important.
Thank you, Ms. Porter.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Ms.
much.
Porter. How's your husband doing?
It's very shady. We never know.
Pardon? Yeah, I did.
What situation
We were
arises.
down to
We might
a
go
few
to
seconds,
hospital. We will work very hard with Indian Trail and with all of you, and just please help us too.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the next person on the list is Dawn, and I hope I say your name correctly. Is it Gunno?
Yes, you got it. You win the prize.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Keep that list. I can't.
Is it okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, if you can hear me. Oh, break the technology. Okay. Good evening. Like you said, my name is Dawn Gano. Very rarely do people get it right. My husband and I are relatively new to Canal Winchester. We moved here 7 years ago, which I understand in Canal Winchester terms is like baby new. So I have a 7-year-old who's supposed to enter 2nd grade, and I have a 4-year-old. And my 4-year-old turned 3 last May of 2019 or 2020. A month after her birthday, she got mysteriously ill, and long story short, ended up in Nationwide Children's Hospital with multi-system inflammatory syndrome from an asymptomatic COVID infection. So we never knew she had it. We never knew we had it, if we had it. At the time, the testing was really bad, so we still don't know who all had it. We know that she did. So it's been a long year of testing, of blood draws. That kid's had more blood drawn in her last year than we probably all have combined. She's had MRIs, she's had CAT scans, she's had ultrasounds, she's had a couple urinary catheters and tests on her bladder because her kidneys were so badly infected. So I say all that to let you know that I come from experience and knowledge in this subject. We unfortunately now have access to some of the premier experts on COVID and MIS-C because she's part of a lot of research studies. She was the first kid in Central Ohio with it. So it was a long, scary, traumatic year. So I am here to also beg you to reconsider the mask policy. You've all heard from me like a million times. You're probably ready to like put a restraining order against me. But I speak from knowledge and experience, and it's only rare until it happens to your kid. And it's scary. And, sorry, I know there's a lot of excuses, right? Like the masks are traumatic for kids, and you know, it's scary. Like nothing's more traumatic than your 3-year-old strapped to a table being rolled into a CAT scan machine, okay? My son had to live through all this as well, this theoretical disease that we had to stay home from school for, and then his daughter was in the or his sister was in the hospital. It happens, and it's super scary. And we now, families like ours and families like hers, with no online option anymore and no mask mandate, we feel like there's no safe option for our families because we don't know what will happen to her if she gets exposed again. We don't know. And so as of right now, we've withdrawn our son from Canal Winchester schools, and he's going online. We don't know what we're going to do with her because she's supposed to start preschool here, but obviously we're not going to do that. So all of that to say, I have a few questions, if that's okay. I've written to you all, but Matt's the only one that ever responds back. So I'm going to ask the rest of you. The first is, was there ever a poll put out into the community to ask parents and or administrators their feelings on the subject of masking.
There was no poll to the community, as far as I know.
Because I get a lot of, well, we want people to have choice, blah, 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 but I also know that in my view, there are a lot of folks who share my view. Now, obviously, we surround ourselves with people who are like-minded, so I get that, but my reason for asking that is then this metric came out, or this crazy flowchart came out for quarantining that I feel like I have a couple advanced degrees and even I can't understand it. So how do the teachers feel about this sort of crazy guideline, and who's going to be in charge to know that little Jimmy was wearing his mask, but he was only 2.7 feet away from the infected kid, so he does need to quarantine, but Susie is vaccinated but was masked but not 3 feet away, so who's going to be in charge of making sure that those guidelines are now followed in the schools?
I can say, I know we're going to do contract tracing, but to answer that part of your question, your concern, I know for me in my household, because I have a seventh grader and a second grader, so I know in our household we share some of the same concerns. So if you notice, I'm wearing a mask this evening, and my kids are going to wear masks. And one thing I will stress for those parents who do have that concern is that, you know, whether they're vaccinated or not, that mask is going to be the difference between them being able to go to school if they are exposed. So I would encourage parents, whatever they choose. I know for me in my household, we are going to have our kids wear masks, and one of the rationales is, as we're transitioning back, we want to make sure our kids are in the classroom as much as possible, because you know, from being out a whole year, some parents haven't stepped in the building in a year and a half. It's really important for when my kids go into that building, I want to make sure they stay there. So that's one of the things that I'm going to stress in my household, and I don't know if that answers your question. I know for me, that's a personal
my concern
decision.
is who's going to make sure those rules are followed? If somebody's going to choose not to wear a mask and then gets exposed, who's going to say, okay, little Jimmy wasn't wearing a mask, he needs to go quarantine?
Well,
it's up to the honor system, right? I mean, is that how do we?
Yeah, it's an honor system. Teachers will have to have class seating charts, just like we did last year. It's probably more at. Teachers will have seating charts in their classrooms. We talked to the building principals about seating charts in the cafeteria again. And yeah, I mean, it is going to be somewhat on an honor system, because you're not 100% sure who was going to wear a mask that day. More than likely, they are going to know, especially at the elementary levels, because they are self-contained classrooms, and they don't move around as much at the elementary level. So I'm very confident that our teachers will have a great idea of who was wearing a mask that day, how far apart they were. Middle school, high school, kids move around a lot more, and that's a little more challenging. It was challenging last year for us. And so, but I feel confident that our teachers will do a good job, especially at the elementary levels, because it is more of a self-contained classroom moving forward at that grade level.
But wouldn't it all just be easier if we just said, hey, everybody wear a mask? I mean, and take that off the teachers, the administrators, to keep track of who was near who and who was masked and who wasn't. And I guess I don't understand why we would go through all of that difficult flow chart when we could just say, hey, everybody put on a mask. You did it last year and no one died from wearing a mask. Like, let's just put them on again this year. And is there a threshold then for you to say, when we hit X, we'll enforce masking? Is there a metric that you're following? Is there?
Franklin County does not have a metric for that. I just talked to them this morning about that. We would contact them if we do see that sign that the trends are going to go up, whether it's COVID positive or a spread, and working with them, we would make a determination of what direction that we have to go. But every organization business is different. So having a threshold for one size fits all doesn't work, because at the high school it's different than at the elementary level because of the self-contained classroom versus where kids move around all the time. So there isn't a specific threshold that Franklin County uses, but if something does happen when they see the numbers coming up or I see our numbers going up, I'll be in contact with them like I was last year. And we'll sit down and make a decision on what's best for that either classroom, building, or district as we move forward.
Okay.
So, as a parent of 3 daughters who came through Canal Winchester, if my daughters were in Indian Trail today, much like Kevin expressed, my kids would go to school with a mask.
And I appreciate that.
So they
the
would.
challenge is the science tells us that my mask protects you more than it protects me, right? Like my wearing a mask is protecting you more than it's protecting me. So, and knowing that not everybody's required to wear a mask, how does somebody know that my son is supposed to have his mask on? So if he gets to school and gets picked on for a mask and takes it off, is anybody going to know, like, hey, Harper's supposed to have a mask on and he doesn't? So that makes it difficult.
What I struggle with is now we've put the teachers in a situation to be the police. So if a kid takes his mask off or the kid won't put his mask on, do we put that kid in detention? Do we send them home? Do we put them in timeout?
What do you do if a kid comes to
So-
school in shorts that are too short, or flip-flops, or spaghetti straps? What do they do?
Yeah, that's a dress code.
Right. But
yes.
I mean, the teachers are doing this already, right? Like, they're already policing to
Masking's
some
different
degree.
from shorts, in my point of view, okay? So we're now asking the teachers, so we're gonna send kids, so we're gonna force kids and parents that they have to wear a mask or they can't come to school. So now we're removing that child or that family and their beliefs and their perspectives from attending school.
But again,
And I
if
don't know how-
my
I
kid can't come to
can't-
school in flip-flops.
But I can't make that decision, Dawn, to force families. We received many emails from you and your friends and other folks. I received a lot of other emails from people thanking us for allowing them to make choices for their own families. So I know you said you're hearing a lot from your group of and like-minded people that
Right.
want. There's a whole nother group that I'm getting emails from saying thank you for allowing us to make our own choices as a family. So, me as a board member, you want us to make decisions that align with your values, but not worry about anybody else's values. So we're not in a very easy position. So my position has been, as you could tell from the emails, I'm going to leave it up to the CDC, to the Franklin County Health. They are strongly recommending masks.
Universal masking as a policy is their
I-
exact phrase. Universal masking as.
There's no policy.
Their exact phrase says, we recommend universal masking as a policy.
Recommend. There's no mask,
It's a
there's no mask
recommendation.
mandate
I get
in the
that.
state of Ohio.
So
But I'm asking
you're
you to
asking
make it
me-
not based on values.
You're
but
asking me
based
to go
on science.
against their recommendations and to mandate it. Why would I go against their
But you
recommendations?
also know that they can't mandate it because they've changed the state law.
Mr. Kruger, we're well over to 5 minutes. Don, you still have a few more minutes because you were asking questions. If you'd like to continue, we'll give you a few more.
I'm not going to get any.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the third speaker on our list, and again, I hope I pronounced your name right, is Rich Rodewald.
Got it. Good job.
Excuse me. Good evening. Thank you all for your time and taking the time to hear us out. I want to kind of speak to the other side of it, and I do want to make this based on facts and science and data. And I wanted to start with this, with the mask subject. We know that COVID is transmitted through aerosol particles at this point. And aerosol particles with a measurement of 0.00047, that is fog, mist, and dust. We can visually see these things. COVID particles are much smaller. There is not a mask made right now that can keep out fog, mist, and dust from getting in or going out. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. No mask protect against this. When you look at actual data, facts, and science, if we really care about the health of our kids, I suggest we look at the long-term physical and psychological effects of forcing our children to wear and breathe through sweat and spit and dirt-filled rags every day, because I've been around the sports fields, I've been around the schools, I know how infrequently these masks are washed, coupled with the fact that they're really not doing a whole lot from a science and fact-based situation. I do believe everybody should be afforded the option, if it makes you feel better and you want to wear a mask by all means. But I am asking you guys, last year we yo-yoed kids in and out of school. All year long, masks were mandated in school. And we went times where we were only allowed in the school part-time. We went at the very last month of school, they were allowed to be back 5 days a week. At the very beginning and around Christmas break, they weren't allowed in at all. That was with masks. That's with masks going on. And a lot of that had to do with the test rating of our area. And now we know that whether we're orange or red, well, the CDC has told us that testing system, the PCR test, was flawed. And it couldn't differentiate between influenza and COVID. So what I'm asking you guys to do is for this school year to be leaders, not just do what Carroll does or Pickerington does or what somebody else suggests, and make any decisions based on how we handle quarantining, shutting down, masks. Base that on facts. Base that on science. Again, the mask thing, If it makes you feel better, wear it, but there is not a mask that protects against COVID aerosol particles. It's not out there. So I would just like you guys all to make your decisions based on facts and science and data, not emotion, not individual cases. We have a very big school district now. Like, our school district is growing every single year. We have so many classes and so many kids. And for comparison's sake, the CDC estimates 480 kids died of the flu in the 18-19 season. That's twice the amount of kids that have died in the last 18 months of COVID. There's been less than 200 kids. There's been less, they weren't wearing masks in 2018 and 19 for the flu.
That's the point.
Okay, ma'am, please.
The flu is a greater risk for our kids, scientifically, data, fact-driven, than COVID is. And that's just proven. There were more kids that died of the flu in 2018 and 19 in one flu season, 3 to 4 months, than 18 months of COVID. Doesn't mean that it's not sad when it happens. It is. But to have kids in and out of school, disrupting their everyday lives and things of that nature, that's where our kids, as that sign says, need to be empowered, and they need to be able to trust their leaders, and that's everybody sitting here. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, our last speaker who has signed up for public comments is Tom Marker. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Marker. I'm the parent of a soon-to-be third grader who will be having her first day at Winchester Trails this week. Many of you might know my name. I've emailed all of you several times over the last few weeks with my concerns and my strong disapproval of our current policy. I did receive one reply from Mr. Sotler replying that we are continuing to monitor the situation and following the guidelines set forth by the Franklin County Board of Health, and I appreciate that. I know that this is an extremely difficult decision and much like I have every day in my daily life at work, I have to make decisions that make nobody happy through compromise. Some people are happy, some people are not. I get it, it happens. And I also understand the gravity of the situation that faces you. So I appreciate that you are taking this seriously. However, when I looked to see what are the guidelines from the Franklin County Board of Health, I appreciate that there is no mandate. I appreciate that the political environment in this state is far too toxic to have any sort of mandate right now. But the Franklin County Board of Health website says, we strongly recommend that schools implement a universal mask policy for students and staff. That is the strongest language that the Board of Health can use in this current political environment. I have some serious concerns. I mean, I don't want to belabor my earlier point, but strongly recommending universal masking is not the same as strongly recommending that parents strongly recommend that their kids wear masks. Pragmatically, I'm looking at this quarantine flowchart. I'm a middle manager in IT. I live in flowcharts all day. And when I look at that flowchart, I go, how much money, how much time, how much sick leave are we going to dedicate to following this optional version when having a universal mask policy would certainly make all of our lives a lot easier on that side. I heard the previous speaker talk about a desire not to be yo-yoing back and forth. I can't help but see a situation where we are not pulling our kids back, where we're not looking at having to do an emergency hybrid situation, or what do we do like on the news when hundreds of kids are quarantined? How do we have that conversation? So my family has been basically left with what I think is a really terrible choice. I love this school district. I'm involved in the community. And I feel like we have basically been given the choice to send our child into a potentially unsafe environment where the upside has a ceiling and the downside is, well, it's deep, unfortunately. And I have talked to a lot of other parents who feel the same way. And much like Dawn, my family is currently looking at enrolling in an online program for this year, which really hurts all of us. We want our kid to be back in school. We want our kid to be back with their friends. We want our kid to be in clubs. I just don't see how it's a good choice right now. So you might be thinking to yourself, all right, you've made the decision. Go to Ohio Connections Academy. Have a great year. So why am I here? I know that there are plenty of concerned parents, people I've talked to in my neighborhood, people I've talked to in the community who say they feel like they are forced into a bad choice as well. They don't have the luxury to have another parent stay home and work with their kid online. They're basically forced because they work 40 hours a week. They have to send their kid to school and hope for the best. I know that you guys are going to do your best. I know that the teachers care. This isn't a conversation about me thinking that you're heartless and don't care. I just think that the current choice is misguided. And I'm also here to speak for kids like my daughter who don't have a choice. They're currently unable to receive a vaccination. When the vaccinations are available, we're going to put our kid right at the front of the line if we can. I understand that everybody else may not feel that way. And perhaps when we have an environment where everybody can make that choice, we can have a different conversation. But I just feel like statistically, we are going to find ourselves in a situation where, yeah, sure, kids might not die. But how many kids do we want to see in our school district that have already have the same thing happen to them? We've already heard from one parent. I don't know, is it a pile problem? How many kids is too many? Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it a dozen? I thank you for your time. I strongly urge you to reconsider your decision. Thank you all.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Is there any other public voice? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
From my perspective, I just want to make a statement. I have a son who goes to Canal Winchester schools too, so any decision that I make would be based on being a dad and being a school board member. I just don't know what the exact right answer is. I'm going to go with what the current knowledge says, that not make it mandatory, make it a voluntary process. I'm going to suggest to my son he should wear a mask to school, and I know full well he won't. But anybody else on the board have a comment?
I had something, but I didn't want to interrupt anyone else.
I do as well. I too am a parent who have 2 small children that will be attending Winchester Trail, and therefore they are unable to be vaccinated. But like yourselves, I too will put my children at the beginning of the line once a vaccine becomes available. I share many of your concerns as well. I really feel like in order for our children to stay in school 5 days a week, for everyone to be in school, masking is very important. And I feel like masking and in-person learning is interdependent. Because as we know from looking at the science, looking at the facts, not your own personal political opinions or feelings about it, just looking at pure facts, masking is the best prevention that the little children have. They are unable to be vaccinated. So I really feel like we need to, as a board, have a full conversation, really listen to everyone's viewpoints, but also just look at the facts. And that the chief medical advisor from Nationwide Children's Hospital had given many quotes saying that he prefers that children are masked who are learning in person. Wearing a mask, there's no downside to it. And of course, parents would be able to, parents would be able to provide medical exemptions, or if there's any developmental concerns pertaining to wearing the mask, they could potentially opt out if we were to adopt something like that. But I want to say I respect both sides of it, but we're in the middle of a emergency medical crisis. So I feel like we need to look at the big picture. We have a moral responsibility to protect our children. We need to do that. So I welcome having a full conversation about this.
Well, and I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if you were finished. I didn't want to interrupt you. And the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to thank the individuals that took the time to come out there this evening. You know, sitting on this side and sitting on your side, it's not easy to get up there and have these conversations and talk in front of people, and it can be challenging. So I just wanted to make sure I thanked you. And one of the things I wanted to stress is one of the most important and basic rights in our republic is the ability to express our opinions and free speech. So as you guys came up here this evening, I wanted to make sure I thanked you for that. And one of the responsibilities of being in a leadership position is making difficult decisions. I think everyone full well knows that. And this is one of those decisions that no matter which side we choose or what choice we make, we know that there's going to be some individuals that are unhappy with our decision. So I wanted to state clearly that I respect the opinions of everyone in this school district and the people that have voiced their opinions this evening. And whether we agree or whether our views may differ, my respect for you and your opinions are going to remain the same. So I don't take my role as a board member lightly, and I want people in the district to know that my decision was not made cavalierly or in haste. And as a parent of 2 students in the district, I want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep our schools open, safe, and empower all of our students for success. And we know that there's going to be different feelings on this situation, and unfortunately they've taken on a role and they've kind of branched out to national politics, and it's become very divisive. And one of the benefits of, in my experience of being in Canal, is that we have a positive relationship with each other, and I respect that, and I want to make sure that continues. So I just wanted to make sure, as we move forward to our board meeting, that I said thank you to those individuals that came out this evening, and just know that your voice is heard, and then what you had to say definitely has an impact on my decision and the other board members as we move forward collectively. And I just want to say thank you.
Anybody else from the board? Thank you again. Okay, this would be moving on to the treasurer report. Ms. Roberts, if you would.
Good evening. I don't have much of a planned agenda. Now, if you don't pull up the health insurance report, if you don't mind. I really don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to the masks from a health perspective, but I would urge the board to consider all options, because we do lose the students, and we do have that outcry of kids leaving to do online schools. I know it's not the biggest reason health is obviously the biggest concern, but there would be a financial impact. So we do need to consider those things with the decisions that are made, mask or no mask, because if students start leaving the district, one, we don't want students to leave the district because we want every kid that's in Canal Winchester district to attend, but there are consequences to students leaving to go to online charter. I just want the board to be aware of those type of things. And the piggyback off Mr. Morales and some of the things that the district does with mental health. So I'll point out a couple things. We did add a psychology intern this year. We're partnering with Youngstown State as a reimbursement through ODE. We did add another behavioral specialist. We've added several ELL teachers this year that are being paid from the COVID funds. We've added 3 or 4 reading math Title I interventions. So we are trying to do some things, and that's on top of adding we added a behavioral health within the last 2 years. We added the social worker in the last 2 years. So the district's done a really nice job of really adding the support staff and those things over the last several years. And Mr. Morales pointed out that we do have lots of options, and it's good to have those options because any kid lost to a suicide or any of those things is one too many. So the district is doing a good job. So I wanted to point out those things that we added this year. Specifically, the middle school and high school hasn't had much intervention in the last several years, so we really have added to those things. I know Ms. Sipchak has added a reading program software to the middle school, so we're trying to kind of boast in what we're doing with the mental health and intervention. Financially, this month there's not a lot. If you want to go to the insurance report here, I just want to kind of point out year over year. Prior to COVID, claims were skyrocketing. They were trending poorly for the district, and then COVID hit last March, and obviously we couldn't go to the doctor. So, and essence, it saved us. We're kind of back since July or since January. We've lost in excess of 250,000 in cash with claims. You can see this was one of the worst months we had in a long time. 719,171 in the hole. With that projection, if that trend is to continue, we're looking at claims of $6.5 million, 7.2 million in total expenditures. I haven't updated the budget at 7 million, but right now at the current level, we're projected to receive about 6.5 million. So you can see, if trends continue, we would be about $700,000 short. It's not time to panic, but I think it's time to start really looking at plan design changes. I know we've got unions and things to work with, but it may get to the point to where we have to start looking at mandatory changes, even outside the unions, if we have to wait those periods. But like I said, we will know more. Hopefully these trends don't continue, but I have a feeling, looking at some of the claims, some of the data, that the trends are going to continue, just based on what we've seen during the non-COVID months. We're still sitting in a good situation, just under $2.2 million. That's about the only reason to not be super panicked. If that was much lower, I'd be kind of scrambling over the last several months of the fiscal year to make some decisions. But we are going to add some options, but at least wanted to point that out. Fiscally, from the general fund side, can't really look at much with the first month of comparing, but state budget, we should have no more information next month. They're supposed to get the new numbers next month, so hopefully we get some of that. Otherwise, we're just kind of grasping at straws on what that means. Any questions on any of the financial reports
No,
presented this month?
you're talking about that gap between, now are you talking about 4 or 5 years out? Are we talking about in the next 2 or 3 years? I know you're talking about a little bit concerned about that gap between claims and the actual, the funds we have available. So are we looking at that in the short term, or is that going to be something we're looking at more like down the line? You're more concerned about that gap?
Short and long term.
Okay.
I mean, if the trends continue, we're going to continue to lose 100+ thousand every month.
So it's something that we probably need to look at the plan design. I mean, we're going to have to go through the union and do that, but that's something you're looking at, maybe making a change sooner rather than later on that.
Yeah, and when I say make plan design changes, I mean, they're going to be subtle changes at first. I think a high deductible plan is going to come in January 1st as a voluntary plan for any non-union people. That's not a bad thing. Right now a family plan is costing an individual almost $6,500 for a family plan. If you don't go to the doctor, you're paying $6,500 no matter if you go to the doctor or not. So that may not be a good option for you. So a high deductible HSA plan might be a better option for you from the very beginning, to where you pay a lesser premium and put money into an HSA.
Is there a way to offer multiple plans for different?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We've historically only had the one plan, and I've tried to stay away from offering more than one because it starts to muddy the waters a little bit, but I think we're getting to the point to where we need, from a cost savings, but also, like I said, it's also a benefit to some people that don't really utilize the health plan but are paying top dollar for it. And whether you're in that boat, I mean, it's up to that each individual person, but to have that extra option would be nice.
Okay. Good enough. Now, is the insurance committee, they're aware of this shortfall?
That's why they were created, was to look at plan design changes and to evaluate that. So we've known for a while that the plan was grandfathered in, and eventual change was needed.
Good enough.
That's all I have.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Moving forward, this would be time for the superintendent's report. Mr. Stotler, if you would.
Well, thank you, Mr. Yanati. Good evening to everyone, and welcome to all our viewers. Well, it's hard to believe that on Wednesday, August 18th, we start our first day of school. No matter what decision the board makes here tonight, our kids are coming on Wednesday, August 18th, and that is very exciting to have everyone back in the building. Now, the first day is a staggered start for our kids, so kids and students in grades 1, 2, 3, 6, and 9 will come on August 18th. That's an orientation day for them. I do know we have some quality kids coming in that were not in school last year with some of the schools. Some different arrangements were made there. August 19th, well, all students will attend school at grades 1 through 12. August 23rd is the first day for preschool. August 25th is the first day for our kindergarten students. So it's exciting to have everyone back. We had our convocation meeting this morning with the entire staff. It was good to see everyone back. Everyone is happy, ready to go. Our teachers have been working hard all summer, as you heard earlier, for Mrs. Sherwinski with professional development, for many different things that we have going on in the district, from curriculum changes to Leader and Me, and other programs that we have going on. Our maintenance and custodians and grounds people have done an excellent job cleaning our buildings, preparing for them. They'll continue to maintain the safety and sanitation of the buildings throughout the summertime, or throughout the school year. Also know that our classified staff worked very hard as secretaries this summer, working with the administrations to make sure that we're ready for first day of school on Wednesday, August 18th. So it's exciting to have everyone back this school year. Our plans for the school year right now are we are currently still operating under that it is strongly recommended but not required that students wear masks. That's a discussion from gathering the board wants to have more talk about during, we could do it now or we could do it later under action items. That's totally up to the board. We have heard from many different people on both sides of the issue, ones that are strongly for it, ones are strongly against it. We've also heard from people that, like Mr. Butler and a few others, yes, their kids are going to wear the mask, but they'd like the opportunity to make that decision on their own as a parent. We are not telling people not to wear masks. I'm strongly recommending people to wear masks to school. But right now, there's no mask mandate out there. We could talk verbiage all we want. We could say semantics all we want. There is no mask mandate out in the state of Ohio. So right now, we are strongly recommending, following the Franklin County Department of Health, strongly recommending masks, not making it required for our students and our staff. That's the current condition that we're in right now. We will make sure that masks are required on on-school transportation vehicles. That includes extracurricular activities. That's a federal guideline through the CDC. We will continue with the hand washing, sanitizing, cleaning protocols like we do. We should be doing that anyway with the flu season coming up, but we will continue those protocols from last year, and we're going to do our very best to maintain that 3 feet of space in our buildings. With everyone back, we can do it, but it's going to be challenging. Lunch will be challenges, but I know the building principals have plans to spread kids out as best as possible. So I'm looking forward to get kids back. Yes, it's going to be a challenging year, but having our kids back in the buildings and learning again, whether it's the academic, social, or emotional part, is the most important thing that we could focus on right now. So, board?
I think we need to discuss it.
Need to discuss. So let's.
And would you like to have that underneath an action item, or would we rather push it into the discussion at the end of the meeting? I think that's the question now.
Whichever works best for the agenda.
You guys can decide.
Well, I think sooner rather than later would be a good idea.
Right.
Okay. So if I can hear from the board, if you would.
Well, I know I've made my statement as far as I know this is going to be a challenging decision, and I've heard different opinions from different perspectives, and I'm also aware that there are parents and students who have not been in our building for almost 18 months. So as we move closer to that start date, that anxiety, that nervousness is going to be there. I know I myself, as an intervention specialist, a teacher, I'm going back into my classroom next week. So I'm going to be in front of my students, and I think for me, I know we've all been dealing with this, but this is a very present issue. So I'm going to be walking into a building, and like I said, I'm going to be wearing my mask as soon as I walk in there, and I know that's the decision I'm going to make for my children. However, I understand that as a board member, I have to take everyone in this community's perspective in my decision-making process. So for me, as a good board member, and this is my perspective, is that I have to sit here and listen to, if I have 100 people in front of me, I have to take each one of those individuals' perspective and try and make a decision that maybe doesn't make everyone happy, but takes all of those opinions into account when I make my decision. So I'm more than comfortable if we want to make it an action item and vote on it today. I know as of today, right now, the plan is to continue to give parents the option to make that choice. I'm comfortable with that decision right now as a board member. I know not everybody may agree with that, but that's where I'm at with it. But if we would like to put it as an action item and vote on it, I'm completely comfortable with that. However, this is one of those highly charged decisions. I've been here for 6 years, and this is one of the more challenging periods I've been here. I know last year when we were deciding whether to open the schools up, hybrid, that was contentious. And again, this year, this is another one of those issues that has become challenging. But again, like I said, whatever decision we make as a board, I want everyone to understand that my respect for you and your opinion is never going to change. It's never going to waver. I'm going to be as respectful as I can. And the only thing I would ask, and particularly for our students, our teachers, our kids in the building, whatever choices that we decide to make, whether if you send your kids to school with a mask on or if you choose not to, I want those students to be those portraits of a graduate, to be respectful of one another, to make sure that if you do send your kid to school and if we choose to make an optional, that we're making those kids uncomfortable who are wearing masks, and vice versa. If we do decide to make the mask mandate something universal, we don't get on Facebook and start getting name calling. If you don't agree with the decision that's made, you're entitled to respect one another. I think we're entitled to our opinions, but respecting one another is really important. So that's sort of where I stand on it. And I know the other board members are going to have different perspectives, and I'm going to just take a step back and allow everyone else to speak, and then we can move forward from there as a board.
So to make it perfectly clear, at least to me, so you're saying keep masks voluntary or mandatory, which
I would say, I know we all have, I'm an individual, so all 5 of us are going to vote, and we all have our different perspectives. I feel like I'm on the hot seat right now. But I'm going to be honest with you. If I was to make a decision, I'm going to make a decision that's best for me and my family, and I'm going to respect the other individuals in this community who decide to do something different. So that's my perspective. And I know some people are not going to agree with that, and I didn't sign up to be a leader and be on the board to make easy decisions all the time. So this is one I wrestled with, and it didn't come clearly. I mean, it didn't come, not clearly, I shouldn't say that. It didn't come quickly, and it's not something I made cavalierly. It took a lot of intentional thought. But one of the things I kept in mind when I stepped into this board and this role, is that I have to make decisions that's best for everyone. And then this is one where I've heard a lot of different voices on different sides. So I'm going to make a decision I think that's best for me and my family. And I'm going to respect other individuals' decisions as they decide to send their kids back to school next week.
Ms. Talley, I think I know your voice, but
Certainly.
now's the opportunity to be heard.
Certainly, yes. Thank you, Mr. Butler. I, too, would like to make decisions that I feel that would be in the best interest for our children. Of course, as a parent, I'm going to, of course, to decide to send my children to school with masks, but I'm not really talking about me. I feel that we all know the political climate that we're in right now, and Senate Bill 22 is the only reason why there is no mandate. So there's not going to be a health mandate for universal masking. But as I said earlier, the masking is the best prevention method that we have for the smaller children, children age 11 and younger. And I feel like we need to do our due diligence and operate according to the highest standards that we know we can operate under, to have their health and safety as a top priority, as well as our teachers, our staff, and really just think about the ramifications. Other parents, we've heard from parents that have personal experiences with this virus. We really don't know the long-term effects when children are infected. We don't know exactly what effect this is going to have on our budget as far as health insurance claims and things like that, if people subscribe to the program. I strongly feel that we have to be the voice for the younger children. I'm an advocate for masking in general, but specifically if we can implement something that we can currently just reassess, reevaluate, but protect our small children who are unable to be vaccinated. there's numerous citations out there from public health officials. They're the ones that we should listen to. We shouldn't necessarily, like I said, go off of our feelings about it. Just look at the facts. Masking is not going to hurt anyone, and I feel like the children did really well last year, the ones who attended school with wearing their masks. And they're more amenable to certain changes as this than the adults seem to be. So there's the other point of it is that we don't know how these the variant mutations are going to impact the community. We do see data that there's been increased spread of the virus, and it's the Delta variant. We have to be vigilant regarding that. We just have to step up. And I know, like many of you have already said, to impose a mandatory masking on small children, what have you. It's not going to make everyone happy, but I feel like we do have to make these difficult decisions, look at the data, and really decide based upon just being responsible, being morally accountable, to know that we're doing the best that we can do with a poor situation. And I feel like making the masking optional is really being quite passive in this during this very important time. So I do urge my fellow board members to just think about that. Think about the smallest children that can't be vaccinated. And again, we would be able to look at it as a rolling process, you know, not to definitely say this is what it's going to be for an extended period of time, but at least right now, what we know is that the spread has been increasing. We do have data showing that the Delta variant is more contagious, more transmissible. I personally, as a parent and a board member, would like to know that I'm doing the most that I can do to protect others, to protect our children, protect the children going back to homes who have vulnerable family members. We can do better. So I urge my fellow board members to really consider just looking at this.
Mr. Bessler?
Thank you, Mr. Unati. I guess I would like to reiterate what Mr. Butler said. I know we've heard from both sides, and people are passionate about both sides, and we appreciate, at least I appreciate, all points of view. We've heard arguments, or I've heard arguments, and tried to do my own research on both sides, and both sides make strong arguments and points, and I mean, we don't take this decision lightly. We are concerned about everyone's health and safety. I would recommend that everyone wear masks, but I feel it feels more important to give the families an option, to make it voluntary to them to make what decision they feel is most best for their family. So.
Thank you. Mr. Kruger, if you would.
So, obviously, I think board members and folks that have emailed in know my perspective and about allowing people and allowing families to make their own decisions. As critical as this, I think that they're informed enough that that what fits for their family profile is something that they should have the option, not me. I'm not smart enough to sit here and make a decision for 3,800 kids on whether they should have a mask or not. I'm going by leadership from Jim, leadership from the board, the Franklin County Health, CDC, that these are strongly recommendations, they're not mandates. I guess if we would mandate masks, what's that going to look like from a standpoint of when do you not recommend or mandate masks? What's the metric? So right now there's no metric. So what is the metric to say, oh, today we don't mandate masks. What is that?
What we do know is masking helps keep others safe.
Right, but I guess I'm looking for a metric, something scientific, something that says if positivity rate hits 100% last year, oh, then we have to go hybrid, or then we go all home. Is there we don't even know what a metric is to whether we go mandate, then let's lift the mandate, or we don't have a mandate, so what's the metric to go all masks? I mean, we're making decisions and we don't even know where the line is.
And one thing I wanted to stress, and I know, Mr. Sotler might be able to speak a little bit to this, but one thing I want people to understand is that our decision isn't going to stay static. Like, we're not saying this is what it is, no matter what happens, and throw the facts and the data on what's really going on in our buildings out the window. We're going to continue to look at what, obviously, those agencies that give us data are going to be saying, but we're also going to do what we need to do to keep our buildings open. And that's one thing I want to stress to the parents, because I know no matter what I say, I know I'm going to make somebody ain't going to be happy with what I say this evening, but I'm going to be honest with you. As a teacher, as an educator, and this is my 15th year being a teacher, I'm going back into that building. I want to make sure we do everything that we can to keep our buildings open so we're not yo-yoing back and forth, so our parents can have some stability and know Johnny or Susie 5 days a week are going to get a chance to be in that classroom, to be with their teachers and do it in a safe way. So we're going to look at what's going on, our positivity rates here in Canal. And if we do see something, we're going to make those changes, because when we went hybrid, or we didn't go hybrid last year, one of the factors that we made that decision on is, do we have coverage in our building? Are we pulling on our teachers? Do we have subs? And those things really play a factor, because if we don't have the coverage, if we're looking at our teachers and we're seeing some numbers that we're not liking, I'm sure Mr. Sotler, and I don't want to speak for him, I'm going to speak for myself, but we as a board will be flexible in our decision-making process. But as I stated before, from my perspective, this is one of the tough decisions I've had to make. And when I signed up, I didn't sign up to be a board member for a certain section of this district. I'm trying to do the best I can to encompass the decisions, the will of the entire district as a whole, all the taxpayers, all the citizens who go to school here, who live in this community. So I don't want anybody to feel like I'm being callous in my decision-making process, and I'm trying to take everyone's viewpoints into account, and I understand that they're very mixed and they're all over the place. So whatever decision, and if we decide to put it to a vote this evening, my decision is based on what's going to keep our buildings open and what's going to cast the widest net and appeal, or I shouldn't say appeal, but try and meet the needs of as many of those voters and as many people who are members of this community. So that's where my decision-making process is coming from. So, and Mr. Sotler, I know I don't think you have a specific metric, but I want the voters to understand, and people out there to understand, that we're going to make our decisions based on what we're seeing in our buildings. So I think that's important to understand.
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier when I talked to the Franklin County Department of Health. They don't have a specific metric or number that's going to sit there and say, you're going to have to close, or you're going to have to do a mask mandate, because every organization, every building, every school is different. So whether you mask or not mask, there is no number out there. There's no percentage out there. You have some school districts that are using the 50 cases per 100,000 has that cutoff line of whether you're going to mask or not mask. Other school districts are not using that. So everyone's doing something different. There is no magic number out there to do whether we mask or not mask. And this is coming from the health professionals themselves that will sit there and tell you that there is nothing out there that we're going to look at. Now, I do have a call tomorrow, which we do meet weekly with the Franklin County Department of Health. Been doing that since March of 2020, talking with them every single week. We did take a couple weeks off during the summertime, but maybe we'll have more information, because I know that has come up with the superintendents too in the discussion with them. Is there some type of metric out there? So I might have more information for that tomorrow when we meet with the Department of Health.
Because that's my frustration, is they want us 5 board members to make a decision for the entire district, but yet no one's given us any metrics on what line to step on or not step on. I mean, they're leaving it up for everyone. You've got schools doing this and schools doing that. They're putting the board members in a very difficult position. Again, we're supposed to be the experts in this. We're not I shouldn't speak for anybody over here. I'm not the expert in this. I do know, again, as a father, if my kids were in elementary school, I'd send them with a mask. They better keep the mask on. Some kids take the mask. I can't control what my kid is doing when they're not in my care, but I would expect that I've done enough at my house that they're going to respect my values and they're going to keep those masks on. I am not going to impose what I would do onto another individual, another family. I can't, that's, and again, I've been fairly open about that through the numerous of emails and, you know, I know it's not a perspective that is welcomed. I mean, I've seen it on Facebook, I've seen it in the emails that people don't like what I have to, you know, my position, but that's, I'm not basing it on whether a popularity thing. I'm trying to do the best thing for the masses. And I can't get answers from the experts to help back my decision whether I'm making a good decision or a bad decision. And that's my frustration on it, but again, I think everyone kind of knows my views. And so the other thing is when Dawn was up here, I was asking, you know, so now we're putting our teachers in a very difficult position to be the police for a kid to wear a mask. If I can't get a kid to wear a mask, what am I supposed to do as a teacher? Send them home, right? Is that what the rule would be, Jim? We just said, Jim, would that, I was asking Jim actually. Jim, what would we do if kids aren't?
Well, we talk about keeping kids in school, and that's what we want to do, keep kids in school. You know, would we have
and I know you don't have to answer, Jim. I'm
consequences
just
for them?
putting you on the
I don't
spot.
have,
I mean,
but
what does that
this is
mean?
for, I mean, this is just not me. This is what a lot of administrators are focused on right now. What do you do with the kids that come to school? Because they will. Because there are parents that don't want their kids to wear a mask, so they will come to school. So do you punish them because their parents don't want them to do? And we talk about keeping kids in school and making sure they get the best opportunities. This is not a dress code issue. You know, everyone wants to dress us with the dress code issue. It's not a dress code issue. This is a health issue in regards to recommendations and versus a mandate. We don't have a mandate. And so what do we do with those? Yes, we can put them in detention. We can send them home. Is that the best thing
So
for
now
the
we're not
kid?
teaching the kids. Now we're putting them in a corner because they don't want to be forced to
And
wear a
then that
mask.
becomes an issue for the teachers, the administrators, and everyone else. Just something to consider as we move forward. We could easily follow, yes, it's going to be talk to the parents, wear a mask, give them a mask, and then eventually get to that. We always have layers before we get to the actual consequence, or at least we try to do that up front.
So what are we going to do?
Working with the kids.
Yeah, so what are we going to do when children start getting sick? I pray that's not the situation. But if children in numbers start coming down with illnesses and they're not able to be in school and they're missing school, I mean, how are we addressing that? Because, again,
I don't know if the mask is that end all be all. I mean, a kid's going to put his finger up his nose, and now the mask doesn't work. Now the mask is dirty, and they got. I mean,
but it's a step. It's a layer of protection.
But are they clean masks?
And
I mean, we're trying to get kids to eat breakfast and come to school with, you know, put together. And I don't know if their mask is clean. I don't know what's going on at their house. I mean, so yeah, we open up.
The school would be able to provide replacement masks. You know, they were able to do that last year. You know, and I feel like being in alignment with Mr. Sotler's thing from this morning, connectivity, we are all connected. So that is different from the dress code, you know, and I feel like this is a more pressing issue that we need to be very conscious about. And a mask doesn't hurt anybody, you know.
Well, you ask different people, they have different responses to that.
I'm
in agreement with you, but you talk to other people, they have different responses.
There would be recourse for them to take
Sure.
if they feel that it does.
But my thing is, we're putting all the kiddos on the bus with a mask.
Yeah.
Why don't we just leave it on the rest of the day? Why do I have to force mom and dad to make sure that they have the mask on? If the kid has a mask on the bus, they get off the bus, and kids love masks, they're just going to wear it the whole day at school. I mean, I'm not saying that we're stripping masks off kids when they get off the buses. I mean, they should have them on.
Just in good governance, that's what I'm looking at. And I know many people would think that this is a totally different example that I'm getting ready to use, but in 2006, there was a smoking ban imposed that was passed for the state of Ohio. And I'm sure there were people on both sides of that. Now you're prohibited from being able to smoke in public places, places of employment. The reason behind that is it was because the ban provided some kind of minimal standard of protection that everyone should be entitled to due to the research that showed there were hazardous effects to your health based upon secondhand smoke. That affected everybody.
It's true. Now, to be fair, though, with that, that was a statewide referendum, so the majority of voters in the state had to approve that. So, with that being said, that is true. And now, with that decision-making process, and I want to do as respectful as possible, we gave the voters a chance to make that decision, and they made the decision to ban, and that's what we did.
Which goes back to my statement earlier in very
just
many
wanted
parent
to-
statements
wanted
that
to
we are
address-
in a toxic political
Exactly.
environment that prevents that from happening.
So one thing that prevented that was giving the voters a chance, and once the majority spoke, then it made it a lot easier to implement that ban. But to answer your question, I'm sorry, you kind of used that example. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine, you're
Okay.
fine. I'm just saying there were numerous laws, mandates, things that everyone don't agree with.
I agree. And this is one of those tough
And
decisions.
just thinking
Yes,
about how
absolutely.
appropriate connectivity was, I feel like it's appropriate for us to look at requiring masking, and I'm saying just for the small children, at least.
And I agree.
You know,
And
at
that's
least.
that's one of the reasons why my kids are going to wear masks. And one thing I'm stressing to the parents, and I feel like I'm going to beat a dead horse. If you want to make sure your kids don't have to quarantine, they're in the building, the one thing that's going to guarantee that is if they're wearing their mask all day, every day. Everything else is inconsequential, because if they get exposed, then whether they're vaccinated or not, they still have to go home for that quarantine period. The one thing that me and my wife, and I'm just going to speak for me, that I know my son's going to be safe and I know he's going to be able to go to school every day, is that he's wearing that mask, and that's the decision that we're making. So,
And I feel like it's easier on the teachers if we just say, hey, you know, students, just wear your mask. We implement that policy so they don't have to worry about that crazy
Well, I
quarantining.
appreciate all the
choicing.
board members' input. The last thing I would say is that I go out to public places and you go to stores, the masks are voluntary. So while the school is different, I would like everybody to wear a mask if they could. But to make it mandatory is just beyond our bailiwick, I think.
If you just listen to the health experts, then it's really not that difficult of a decision.
The majority of folks I've talked to are not in favor of that.
Well,
They're
there's a
in the
lot.
community, and if you were to see the teachers today, and I'm gonna use them as a benchmark, there were very few who wore masks. Now, I'm not putting them on the spot, I'm just saying that this is a bigger picture than just that.
Well, the good news about that, we have over 80% of our staff is fully vaccinated too. So that's,
And God, I hope they get the little ones vaccinated as soon as possible.
Under the current model, Mr. Sotler, of not being mandatory, are parents going to have an opportunity to let the teacher know that my child is to wear a mask? And would the teachers know, I mean, to kind of push back onto those kids to say, hey, please put your mask back on? Or are we going to even put that on the teacher?
yes, I mean, just like any other start of the school year where parents will tell teachers things about their kids, what they would like and not like, you know, and teachers do a very good job at doing that. And so I'm probably more than likely parents will say, please have Johnny keep his mask on or Mary keep the mask on. At the same time, it's not the teacher's responsibility to be the police. So we are hoping that our kids will listen to what their parents want them to do as they come to school. And at the same time, our teachers will do their best diligence in making sure that those kids that are supposed to have their mask on will. But at the same time, they're there to educate them too. So in regards to other options for our kids, we no longer have the remote learning option. That was taken away. That was a one-year deal. So unfortunately, QUAL is not available for no school district in the state of Ohio. And so the options for kids are coming to school, we're doing an online or homeschool. Those are the options that were given to us. And so we can't do anything different outside of that. That is out of our control.
And there's no ODE guidance as far as a mandatory masking, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So board, how would you like to continue?
Would you, I mean, at this point, I know where we're at as far as our district policy. If someone feels uncomfortable, one thing I would encourage them to do is if you want to call for a vote in the action items, that would be the best place to put it. And we can make a decision as a board and move forward. If not, I know Mr. Sollers given us as much information as he can this evening, so. We don't want to call for a vote in the action items, I guess we'd have to move forward.
Would you like to do
I would
that
like
as
to
a board?
call for a vote in the action item.
Okay, so,
So be it.
so, get a motion.
I need a motion to add the vote for the masking for all students, added to the action item agenda, please.
So moved.
Ms. Talley,
Second?
Mr. Metzler. Do we need a vote on that now, or
We're gonna, I think we should.
do we need a vote to add it, or do we just add it?
Yeah, we need a vote.
Yeah, we need a vote. Okay, so Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yeah, we're voting to add a vote?
Voting to add it to the action, voting to add the motion to the action item.
Mr. Butler? Yes. Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Yanni?
Yes, motion passes 5-0.
So that'll be
Action
action item
item
number 4.
Number 4.
Okay. Mr. Sotler, are you finished with your report, if I may?
Yes, I am at this time. Thank you very much.
Just to be clear, we're adding action item to vote for mandatory mask policy.
Vote for or against a masking option or
That'll be in
mandatory.
Section G, action items, and that's gonna be item number 4.
We need to clarify.
Yeah, we need to say,
So the motion is to continue with the current recommendation, or it's for a mask mandatory. So, Mrs. Talley, you made the motion, and your motion is
To add to the action items, a vote whether to continue with the current plan of making masks optional,
Okay.
or to vote to require masks for pre-K through 8th grade.
Not for high school.
Correct.
Okay,
It's highly recommended, but I'm focusing on the small children who can't be vaccinated.
good enough. Thank you.
So, just to be clear, we're gonna vote yes, either to keep the plan we have, or no would be to change it to the universal, to change it to a mask mandate, okay.
So a vote yes would be to keep the current plan, strongly recommend. A vote
Okay.
no would be a
Yeah, we-
mandatory
Impose
mask.
mandatory
And we
for-
want to clarify that in the action items before we vote.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
So there's no confusion. Just in case, us old folks.
Correct.
Okay, moving on to district reports. Are there any? Any questions from the board about district reports?
no, sir.
Okay, then that would take us to, let's see, where am I at here? To the consent agenda. And I would need a motion. Remember, was there an addition, no, there was an addition to the consent agenda, is that correct?
That is correct. Number 4.
Okay, so there is a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition.
So move.
Is that Mr. Krueger?
Yep.
Second.
Ms. Talley?
Thank you.
Ms. Hunt, if you would, please?
Absolutely. We'll start with number 1. It is, we're asking you to approve the minutes from the July 19th regular meeting and the August 2nd special meeting. Number 2, for certified personnel, we're asking you to approve the employment contracts for the 3 individuals listed below. Also, we have stipends. Both of those stipends, Carla Chwinsky and Alyssa Locker will split the master teacher chair stipend. Moving on to number 3, we have classified personnel. The first section there is the resignation retirements. We have several that came in over the last month from our last board meeting, resignations, and then you'll see the recommendations for approval to hire those positions. Most of those are from the resignations that occurred sometime over the summer months, so we're filling those. Moving on to number 4, we have supplemental personnel. We did have an adjustment for the marching band director for Luke Furness. That is just changing. We approved him in July, and I made the error in not giving him enough levels. So that is a correction. And then moving on to resignations, we do have 2 resignations from coaches. And you'll see then under the next section, we are approving individuals for those same 2 positions of the resignations. And then we also have a approval of a volunteer coach for football. And then I'm going to pass it on to possibly Mr. Roberts, number 5, the special service contracts.
Yep, just a couple more tuition contracts with Bridgeway Academy and Eagle Wings for school year 21-22.
Any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, if you would, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mr. Unati?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the action items, I need a motion for subject number 1, the 2021-22 bus stop resolution.
So moved.
Mr. Butler?
Second.
Was that Mr. Metzler?
Kruger.
Mr. Kruger.
Okay, this is a routine action item that we have to do this every school year. You give me the authority, where my designee, in this case will be Dr. Bruning, to determine the location of all school bus stops, which shall be approved annually by the School District Board of Education. So this is approving all our bus stops for the year, knowing that we will have to make changes the first couple of days of school or weeks of school, but right now this is the bus stops that we have for approval.
Good enough. And I don't envy Mr. Bruning for that job. Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Unati?
Yes. Okay, the second action item would be a resolution to advertise for the purchase of buses, and I think a clarification is that this is not a motion to purchase them, but to advertise for the purchase.
That is correct.
I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Mr. Metzler?
Second.
Ms. Talley?
Okay, as Mr. Uniti said, we're not buying buses, but we are just going out to bid for them, and we're going to use Meta Solutions to advertise and receive bids on the board's behalf, as per the specifications submitted for the cooperative purchase of 4 conventional school buses. We're not buying them, we're just going to go out to bid.
And this is an ongoing process of
That is correct.
purchasing new and retiring the older ones, correct?
Yes.
Do we usually purchase 2 or do we purchase 4?
We've had a plan for 2,
Okay.
but we're leaving that option open in case there is a budget, because we're having more of a need. I think we're looking to purchase 4 next year.
Yes.
With some different things that are going on in the district with additional routes and that type of thing. So we want to leave the door option in case bus pricing is extremely low. And then we
I
can,
got you. Yeah.
then
Plus,
we can
we're running
purchase
in,
more.
some of our older buses are coming out of alignment with the State Highway Patrol, and so we have to replace those in the next couple years. So trying to be proactive if we could find good prices.
So we're not locked into the 4. We're going to get at least 2, but if you do find a good deal or we can do something.
Absolutely. We'll get 4.
It's up to 4 current plan, but yeah.
Okay.
Are we finding buyers for these old buses? What are we doing? Trade in?
Typically, we just salvage them.
Is that
Yeah, they're
parts?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
typically.
Mike, they're not worth much, are they, when we go out?
No, the problem we get into is that now even churches have to be inspected by the State Highway Patrol, so the reason we would get rid of them is the reason someone else is not going to buy them. They have to pass that inspection, but we're getting rid of it because we don't want to spend money.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to give a bad bus to a church, would you?
No.
No.
Well, what I'm saying is,
In
in
good
the past,
faith.
they would gladly take those because, they weren't putting many kids on and a lot of things like that. But now, it doesn't matter. They have to have the same inspection we do as the school district.
And there's a certain liability for selling an unsafe bus, is there not?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Like, what if an individual just wanted to buy a bus to turn it into a camper or something like that?
Actually, I've got somebody who might be interested in our, one of the buses we're gonna get rid of is a handicap bus, and they're interested in that bus. They just wanna kinda kick the tires and get an estimate as to how much is it gonna cost to do that. And the other thing you kinda get into, sometimes you spend $10,000 on a bus to get it, you still got a 15-year-old bus, or an 18-year-old bus, or in the case of one of the ones we're gonna get rid of, a 20-year-old bus.
Good enough. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Unati?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. And the third subject of our discussion, our action items, are employment of the treasurer and his contract. And Mr. Butler would like to say
All right.
his talk.
So this evening, I am honored to recommend to Canal Winchester School District Board of Education a 2-year extension of a contract to Mr. Nicholas Roberts. Over the last 6 years, Mr. Roberts, has served this distinction in the district as treasurer. In his position as Chief Fiscal Officer, Mr. Roberts has demonstrated the highest level of professionalism, work ethic, and character that has not gone unnoticed. Mr. Roberts has performed his responsibilities for the fiscal affairs of the district with excellence. These responsibilities encompass collaboration with district superintendent, the school board, developing, implementing, and monitoring policies and procedures based on sound fiscal practices. The role of the treasurer's office in the school district affects all areas of the educational process, and Nick has helped us continue to build tangible results on a solid foundation. So I'm truly excited this evening to recommend this 2-year extension. So the board will have another 5 years to work with Mr. Roberts, and I'm certain that Nick will continue every day to contribute to our school district's mission statement of empowering all students for success.
Wow. And I'd like to thank Mr. Butler for his diligence and hard work and this contract negotiations.
So,
any questions or comments from the board?
Thank you, Nick.
Very well said.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you
next
for
5
your
years,
service.
Nick.
Thank you.
I think we do need to have a vote on this, do we
Yep,
not?
so I will call for a motion on action item number, and that's going to be action item number 3.
So move.
And then I'll second that one.
That would be Mr. Krueger and Mr. Butler.
Yep.
And if you would, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Unati?
Yes. And thank you, Nick. You've done a great job.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Roberts.
And I believe that leads us to the added agenda item, which was the vote on the masking situation. And let's clarify this vote before
To make
we
it
start.
simple, we're voting to continue to implement the mask optional
Okay. So a vote for yes would be
policy.
keep the policy as is. A vote no would be to look into changing the
Correct.
policy. Okay, I just want to make sure that before we do that, and I need a motion.
So moved.
Ms. Talley?
Second.
Mr. Metzler?
So here's what I have. Motion to approve voluntary masks for school year 21-22. Does
This is the current policy.
that cover it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any discussion before we take a vote, gentlemen and lady?
I would defer to the previous discussion we've already had.
Good enough.
Ditto.
Make sure. Okay, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mrs. Talley?
No.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Unati?
Yes. Motion passes 4-1.
And just to reemphasize. Just to reemphasize this, we are still strongly recommending that students and staff wear masks, but it is still optional at this time. Just so everyone understands that. The board voted 4-1.
And just so everybody knows, I didn't make that decision lightly, but in speaking with a number of people in the community, it was overwhelming to keep the masking voluntary.
And as challenging as this decision is, I did not make it in haste. It's not an easy decision, and one of the challenges of serving on the board is that we don't always get to make easy decisions, and not everything that we're going to do is make everyone happy. So one thing I would encourage parents to do is look at the flow chart and understand that masking your students is going to be the best way to keep them in the building. And I know that's the main priority, is educating our students, empowering them. And as a parent, I know that's what I'm going to choose to do. And I am going to defer to the parents in the community to make decisions that's best for their family. However, I would encourage them, if they want to keep their kids in the building, masking is the best way to ensure that your student can attend school every single day.
And I'm sure we will continue to monitor all the metrics and the statistics so that if we need to change this, it will be done immediately.
Correct. It is fluid. It's not an end-all be-all.
Thank you. Okay, section H are the discussion items, and this will be the first reading of board policy. And Ms. Hunt, I've been waiting for this.
I'm sure you all have. I'm excited to share with you some board policy revisions. There are 4 different policy summaries. I broke them down because it will make it much easier to review these policies. We're going to start first with the district request policies. There are 3 policies that fall under this kind of bundle. The 3 are Title I services, parent and family member participation in Title I programs, and Title I parents' right to know. Each so many years, we're required to review and revisit these policies. So these 3 policies were reviewed, and we are not making any changes to them. But we will note that we have reviewed them with no changes. So that would be the Title I services. The next one that we'll go over are the Edgar revisions.
Could you please explain what Edgar is to the listeners?
Sure, I would love to. Edgar is the Education Department General Administrative Regulations. So in December 2014, the U.S. Department of Education released the newly updated Edgar. This major rewrite of the regulations was issued after nearly 40 years of very little change in the compliance measures that federally funded programs must meet. The regulations covered the application process, financial management, procurement, inventory management, time and effort accountability, cost allowability, record retention, and program oversight. The Office of Management and Budget has now revised sections of OMB guidance for grants and agreements, also known as Uniform Grant Guidance. Proposed changes to these were published in the Federal Register in January 2020. And basically, despite this pandemic that we're going through, the OMB released its final revisions to the Uniform Grants Guidance, right on schedule. The revisions continue the OMB's push for results-oriented accountability for grants, significantly rewrites the sections on procurement and attempts to clarify prior requirements, including provisions related to period of performance and indirect costs. The revised rules were effective November 12th, 2020. These revisions reflect change outlined in the President's management agenda. This guidance is intended to focus on improved stewardship and ensuring that the American people are receiving value for funds spent on grant programs. The revisions are limited in scope to support implementation of statutory requirements, alignment of these provisions with other federal requirements, and clarification of existing requirements to minimize risk in financial transactions. So those 4 policies are being changed because of all that.
So those are guidelines on all your Title I, Title IIA, Title III, ESSER, any federal dollars that you receive, you have to spend it a certain way. These guidelines help dictate that.
So it's a guideline of spending federal funds.
Yes. Yeah.
I like to make it simple for me.
My explanation wasn't simple. And if you remember, we did huge changes again over the last year and a half to Edgar. So as it comes, they're required to make changes, and then we receive the policies from Neola. And this was a Neola recommendation.
Okay. So there's no call for a vote on a discussion item.
I still have 2 more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll get through them quick. I know everybody's ready. The next one here is the non-discrimination, anti-harassment policies update. There are several. When we met with the policy liaisons, I think I handed Mr. Butler probably a stack this big printed off as we were reviewing them, because the policies are actually very large. Each policy that were listed, I want to say there are 14 policies in here, and each one is probably 25 pages long because they're long policies. They are very specific about what we need to do. And so although it looks like, if you look through the packet, it looks like there's tons of changes, it really just is focused on a couple things. The policies have been revised to reflect changes in terminology and definitions, terms, and processes that are consistent with the latest regulations released by the United States Department of Education, specifically the Title IX regulations. If you all remember, we made several changes to Title IX in May of 2020. So, for example, one of the changes that is throughout the policies, instead of saying his, her, we are now saying their. And that then would again talk on the harassment and just the definitions and the words that we use to describe. So that's just an example. And then last but certainly not least, we have the annual updates from Neola, which we have several. I'm going to review them briefly. I apologize. The first one is 2240, which is controversial issues. This policy has been revised because of changes enacted by House Bill 164. The new law defines religious expression to include prayer, religious gatherings such as prayer groups, distribution of written materials or literature of a religious nature, and any other activity of a religious nature, including wearing symbolic clothing or expression of a religious viewpoint, as long as the expression is not vulgar, obscene, indecent, or offensively lewd. Boards are no longer permitted to restrict student exercise of religion to lunch periods or other non-instructional time. Finally, the law declares that a school district may not prohibit a student from engaging in religious expression when completing homework, artwork, or other type of classroom assignment. Rather, the assignment must be graded or scored using ordinary academic standards and shall neither reward or penalize a student based on the religious content. This revised policy reflects current Ohio law and will be adopted to maintain accurate records. The second one is 2260.01, Section 504 ADA, prohibition against discrimination based on disability. Policy 2260.01 places particular emphasis on protections for students who are identified under Section 504 and ADA, including accessibility to qualified individuals with regard to facilities, programs, and activities according to federal law. Revisions to this policy are based on recent Office for Civil Rights investigations and reviews of compliance issues, particularly related to vocational education, career tech educational programs, with particular emphasis on vocational education. These revisions, again, should be adopted and implemented in order to maintain compliance under 504 and ADA. 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities. This policy has been revised to reflect the recognized definition of rape as of January 2021, deleting the original reference to the definition required by the Clery Act at the time of the release of the regulations in May of 2020. The revised definition is that provided by the National Incident-Based Reporting System. Also, there is a suggested revision in the appeals section of this policy. I'll move on then. I apologize. My computer decided not to want to. There we go. Next, we have 6144, which is investments. This policy has been further revised to include the provisions of House Bill 251 to increase from 5 to 10 years the maturity period of certain political subdivision bonds and obligations eligible for investment of a district's interim monies. Only certain investments are eligible for up to a 10-year maturity period. Most investments are limited to a 5-year maturity period. This revised policy reflects current Ohio law. 6220, budget preparation. This one was one that Neola sent along. There were no changes to the policy. However, the last time that we have reviewed it was 2002. So I went ahead and left it in since it was a policy within Neola to show that we have reviewed it and are keeping it the same. 6600, deposit of public funds cash collection points. The revision provides direction regarding discrepancies at cash collection points Further language was added to prohibit cashback payment for check or credit card overpayments. 744001, video surveillance and electronic monitoring. This was due to the significant increase in the use of virtual online learning. This policy has been revised to allow a district to use a pre-recorded lesson or observations of online or virtual learning sessions as part of an employee's evaluation in accordance with a collective bargaining agreement or a memorandum of understanding approved by the board. These revisions are provided to enable expanded use of technology monitoring for appropriate purposes. 845001 is protective facial coverings during pandemic epidemic events. Last year, if you recall, we approved a mask mandate mask policy early in the school year. The policy is revised to reflect the changes in recommended exemptions enacted by the Ohio Department of Health and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The guidance and content of this revised policy, basically, the majority of the changes is that it's specified that it had to be a cloth mask, and now it just says mask. And it also states that there are many exemptions of reasons why you would not wear a mask. 8500 food services. This policy has been revised to add the emphasis being sought by the United States Department of Agriculture to prohibit stigmatizing students who lack the funds to pay for their meal or with unpaid meal charges. And last but certainly not least, we have 8510 wellness. Revisions to this policy reflect updated requirements for evaluation and review of district wellness policies. They have to be reviewed every 3 years, and the updated regulations issued by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. These regulations provide the basis for the USDA review and monitoring of district compliance with the Health and Hunger-Free Kids Act. These revisions reflect the updated USDA regulations.
Aren't there, you said it was last, but not, there's more, isn't there?
I said it last but not least.
Okay.
We will, yes, that's the last one.
What about these?
So definitely a lot of them, but you know, the changes, very little change our current practice.
So you're finished now, right?
I'm finished now. Thank you, Mr. Gennady.
Okay, there's,
You have one, and these, you didn't just write these yourself, these came from.
Thank you. Yes.
Based on law changes, and it's, Neola is a company that
Correct.
writes these industry-wide, so it's an industrial standard, it's not just something you came up with.
Correct,
on your
yeah,
own.
correct. When we make the revisions and then we meet with the policy liaisons, this is coming from Neola, who is our experts in the policy, and anytime House Bill, Senate Bill is passed, or new Ohio Revised Code, we would get the revisions with our policy and the recommended changes. So 3 of the 4 of the packets are all Neola recommended. The one that's district request is due to the fact that Title I has to be reviewed every so many years. We're up for review, and we made no changes to those.
well, thank you, Ms. Hunt.
Almost feel like we need to schedule Carla after the policy reviews.
No, Carla's not here anymore.
That would be good.
I now feel challenged that next policy review, you will get the Carla Chwinski version of Kaya.
There you go.
Wow. That leaves
Oh,
me,
did she?
that leaves me almost speechless, Mr. Kruger. Almost.
Almost, yeah.
Any need for public comment anymore? Any additional new need? Okay, is there, Mr. Sutler, is there need for executive session?
No, sir, no need for executive session tonight.
Okay, so then I need are there any announcements?
No announcements.
Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So moved.
Mr. Butler,
Second.
Ms. Talley. Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Gennady?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler? Yes. Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you all.